We continue now at the top of Daf Lamed Amud Aleph in Meseches Beitzah. This is Beitzah Daf 30a. The Mishnah continues, Ba'aremas hateven, you can begin to take from the pile of straw. Rashi over here says, Umaschilin ba'aremas hateven lahesek. We're talking here, you're taking straw for the purpose of lighting a fire. The chiddush of the Mishnah is, even though you didn't designate this pile for this purpose from before Yontif, this is also not a pile of straw that you regularly take from in order to create a fire. Now, in this line in the Mishnah, it sounds like the Mishnah does not hold to the concept of muksa, because even though the pile of straw was not designated for this purpose, you're allowed to use it for this purpose on Yontif. But the Mishnah ends, you're not allowed to take the wood from the muksa. Rashi over here says, the yard that was behind the houses, that was called muksa. The reason is because it was in the back, and people didn't really go in there a lot. They would put wood over there and other items which they didn't need to use for a long time. Rashi says that in the Gemara they're going to ask, it's a contradiction, this line with the line right before. Because over here it sounds like the Mishnah holds a muksa, meaning you're not allowed to take the wood from the muksa. Sounds like the Mishnah holds a muksa. But then it said you're allowed to take the straw even though that was not designated. Sounds like the Mishnah does not hold a muksa, so the Gemara is going to ask that question. And the Gemara says, Tana, it was taught, if it's impossible to change from the normal fashion, this is talking about carrying things on Yontiv. The Mishnah said that on Yontiv you should carry in a different manner than you carry during the week. But if that's impossible, the Bryce is saying that it's mutter, it's okay. Rashi over here says, let's say, for example, the person invited many guests. The person needs to bring a lot at once, so mutter, so then in that case it's going to be mutter. And the Gemara continues, asking Rava b'Mechuzah. Rava instituted the following in the city of Mechuzah. The daru beduchka lidru berigla. Somebody who carries bedochek, meaning carries in a difficult manner, should carry with a pitchfork. The daru berigla, somebody who normally carries with a pitchfork. Lidru beigra, that person should carry beigra, that means you're going to carry it on a pole. The daru beigra lidru ba'achba, you carry on a pole, you should carry on a different kind of pole. Rashi will explain. The daru beichba, if you normally on a weekday you carry on this ichba, this kind of pole. Nifros sudrei lave. So then on Yontiv, the shino you should make is you should put a scarf over it. V'im lo afshar, and if it's impossible to do some kind of shino on Yontiv, so then shari it's going to be permitted. The Omar Mar, because the master said, Imi afshar l'shanos mutter. If it's impossible to do some kind of shino on Yontiv, then it's still going to be mutter. Rashi over here explains the daru beduchka. That's referring to somebody who carries on his shoulder. Bechol, on a weekday, that's what you would do. B'torach would be difficult. In Balase, so be Yontiv. If you want to carry that burden on Yontiv, let's sorech Yontiv for the purpose of Yontiv. Can go in chavis, so sak mole peiros. You have a barrel, you have a sack full of fruit. Yisa'enu be Yontiv. You can carry it on Yontiv again with this kind of shinoi. Berigla is aser shakor and forka. A rigla refers to a pitchfork. Kedarchi nosei melach limchor v'neshetzarach l'shanos. The idea over here is that you need to make some kind of shinoi. You should always make a shino that makes it easier. Don't do something that makes it more difficult on Yontif. It's easier to use a pitchfork for something heavy than it is to do it on the shoulder. Because if you're going to carry that, normally you carry the barrel on your shoulder, you do it with a pitchfork. That's a shino and that's a little bit easier. That's what you should do. The daru berigla masui chavis gadol sheregilin lase so sabrigla. So then the next statement of the institution of Rava is, let's say it's something you normally do on a weekday with a pitchfork. So then do a different kind of shinoi. Lidru beigra yisul beyantiv b'shnei b'nei adam. Use two people with a pole. B'mot al kesfem, you put the pole on the shoulders. Dahainu nami shinoi lahakal. That's also a shinoi that makes it easier. The daru beigra, if you normally do it beigra b'mot al kesfem, again meaning the pole on the shoulders. So lidru beyantiv laosei masei beichba. Then you use a different kind of pole beichba, meaning b'mot biyadayim. It's a pole that you carry in the hands. Mishum shina. That's also a shina. In other words, it's a change. Instead of putting it on the shoulders, you put it on the hands. Now Rashi points out, even though that's not easier, it's the same thing. Mikol makam shinoi, who nevertheless fulfills the idea that you should do it with a shinoi. And so therefore it's okay. Even though it's a shinoi, and you're not making it any worse, it's not any more difficult. So again, as long as you use a shinoi, even if it doesn't make it easier, as long as it doesn't make it worse, that's okay. Finally, if you don't have any of those solutions, nifro sudra, put a scarf on it. Kalhu, that's very light. Ve'eno mach, but it's not heavy at all. V'shinohu be'almo litzana. It's the idea is it's just some kind of shinoi. It puts some privacy on whatever you're carrying. So that's what you should do for a shinoi. If that's impossible, meaning person doesn't have a scarf to cover it up, so then as we said, it's going to be mutter nevertheless. And the Gemara continues, Amar le Rav Chanan bar Rav le Rav Ashi. Rav Chanan bar Rav said to Rav Ashi, Amar Rabbanan, the rabbi said, Kamud efshar l'shanuye mishaninon b'yom tova. On Yontav, you should always do some kind of a shinoi. V'ahani noshi d'kamalyan chatzvayu maya. But what about these women? They fill up their jugs with water b'yom tov on Yontav. V'lo kamashanyan, they don't do any kind of shinoi. V'lo amrinon lahu v'lo midi, we don't say anything to them. So Amar le, so he said back to him, Mishum de lo efshar. The reason is because there's no other thing to do. There is no possibility. It's impossible to make a shinoi. Hey Chaliyavid, what should you do exactly? Demalya bechatzva rabba timle bechatzva zuta. Maybe you'll say, if you normally use a large jug, so use a smaller one. So kamifsha behilucha, but then you're going to be doing more walking, because if it's smaller, you're going to have to make more trips. Demalya bechitzva zuta. So then you'll say, okay, if you normally use a small one, so timle bechatzva rabba, so then use a larger one. So kamafshi b'masi, that's also a problem, because now it's going to be heavier, so it's more difficult in another sense. So then you'll suggest techasi benichtema. So maybe you'll say, let's cover it with some kind of wooden cover. So zimnin denafil vasile suya. Maybe it'll fall off and then she'll come to carry. That could also be a problem. Tiktere. So then you'll suggest, let's tie it. So zimnin demifsak. Maybe the tie will come undone. Vasile mikter. You'll end up tying on yontif. Tifro sudri lave. So then you'll suggest, let's put some kind of scarf over it. Zimnin demitmish b'maya. No, it might end up going into the water. Vasile de schita. And then you'll come to squeeze out the water, which is also a malacha. So hilgach lo efsha. Therefore, there's no other thing. It's impossible. There's no possibility of a shinoi. So therefore, they do it without a shinoi. And Rashi over here explains, Malyan Maya Shoavos Mayim in Hanor, the woman they would draw up the water from the river. Techasya benichtem or kisa shaletzas ha'asoi l'chadin. It's some kind of wooden cover that's made for jugs or pitchers. So zimnin demifsik, then you're going to tie it. It might come undone. Shatzarach l'kosho shalo yipo b'derech. Right, you're going to tie it so it doesn't fall. V'zimnin demifsik ba'alichaso. Sometimes it'll come undone. V'yasi l'mikshare, and then you're going to end up tying it. V'kesher ha'asoi l'haskin av melacha. If you do a knot that's made for the purpose of fixing something, that's an av melacha. And again, we said demit mishbemaya. Let's say you're going to put in some kind of cloth, so then it's going to go into the water, shenishra b'mayim, and then you're going to have a problem of schita. So again, that's why there's no shinoi that's really possible, and that's why it's okay that they do it without a shinoi. The Gemara continues, Amar le Rava bar Rav Chanin li Abaya. Rava bar Rav Chanin said to Abaya, Tanan, we learned in the Mishnah, Ein metavchin, vein mesafkin, vein meraktin. You're not allowed to clap on Yontif, you're not allowed to bang your hands against your thighs on Yontif, and you're not allowed to dance on Yontif. And so he asked, but nowadays, the kochazina and the avden hachi, we see that people do this. V'lo amrinan lahu v'lo midi. We don't say anything to them. We don't protest. So Amar lei, so he said to him, v'letaimech, but according to your reasoning, Hada Amar Rava, that which Rava said, Lo leisiv inish apuma de lechaya. A person's not allowed to sit by the entrance of the mavoi. The lechi was the pole that was put at the entrance of the mavoi. You can't sit over there. Dilma megander lechefetz vasi leisuye, because we're afraid that something's going to fall out of his hand. It's going to end up rolling out of the mavoi into the Rosh Hashanah, and then he's going to end up carrying it, as Rashi over here says. Dilma megander lechefetz b'Rosh Hashanah chutz lelechi. It's going to roll into Rosh Hashanah outside of the area of the lechi. V'asi leisuye mitoch she'enoi b'mavim mekora lahakir shezer Rosh Hashanah. The Mavoi doesn't have a roof. He's not going to realize he's going from Rosh Hashanah to Rosh Hashanah, and therefore it's going to be a problem. So that's why he said that you're not allowed to sit at the entrance of the Lechi. And so we have the same question. But what about these women? The Shakal and Chetzvayu, again, they take these jugs that are filled with water, and they go and they sit at the entrance of the Mavoi. We don't say anything to them about this issue. So again, the same type of question. Ella, rather, Hanoch Lemli Yisrael, leave it aside for Klal Yisrael. Mutav Shayu Shogagin Va'al Yumazidin. It's better we don't say anything, because it's better that they do it by mistake and they don't do it on purpose. So Hachanami, so here also the same thing when it comes to this issue of clapping and dancing on Yontif. Hanoch Lehemli Yisrael, leave aside Klal Yisrael. Mutav Shayu Shogagin Va'al Yumazidin. It's better that they do it b'shogeg than they do it b'mezid. And the Gemara continues, V'hani mili b'derabanan. But this is only true by an issue that's derabanan. Aval b'doraisa lo, if it would be an issue that was doraisa, we would tell them. We wouldn't say that it's better they do it by mistake than do it on purpose. But the Gemara says that's not true. Veloi, but that's not true. Lo shna b'doraisa v'lo shna b'drabanan. It doesn't matter if it's an issue of doraisa. It doesn't matter if it's an issue of midrabanan. Lo amrinan lahu v'lo midi. We don't say anything to them again. Better they do it b'shogeg than they do it b'mezid. And what's the proof of this? The hatosefes Yom HaKippurim doraisu, because the halacha that you're supposed to add on to Yom Kippur is a din doraisa. V'achli v'shasu ad shechashecha. Yet people eat and drink all the way till it's dark. V'lo amrinan lahu v'lo midi. We don't say anything. So you see, even when it comes to an issue doraisa, we're going to say this principle. Gemara continues at the two dots, quoting the Mishnah, Maschilin barei masatevin. Again, you can take from the pile of straw and you can use that for fire. So the Gemara says, Amar Rav Kahana says, Zos Omer, this line in the Mishnah seems to indicate, Maschilin ba'otzer tchila, you could take something from the otzer, meaning again, something that's really stored away, it's muksa, it's not a problem. Moni Rabbi Shimoni, so who's the author of that line in the Mishnah? It seems to be Rabbi Shimon, the Leslie muksa, who doesn't hold to the concept of muksa. So Amos Eifa, let's look at the end of the Mishnah. Avalo be'etzim sheva muksa, it says you're not allowed to use the wood that's in the muksa. Asan Rabbi Yehuda de Islay muksa, that sounds like it's following Rabbi Yehuda, who holds to the concept of muksa. So it's a contradiction in the Mishnah. Are we holding of muksa, or are we not holding of muksa? Do we follow Rabbi Shimon or Rabbi Yehuda? And so the Gemara answers, Hacha ba'arze v'ashuchi askinon. Here at the end of the Mishnah, we're talking about expensive kinds of wood, like cedar wood. They are not things that are used for fire, they're used for building. So the muksa machmas chisar and kis, that's already a stronger kind of muksa. It's a muksa because it's a loss of money. It's something that's expensive. You would never use it for this purpose. V'afilu Rabbi Shimon moda. Even Rabbi Shimon in this case would be moda that there's muksa. So according to this answer, Rabbi Shimon is the author of the Mishnah, and he admits at the end when we're talking about muksa machmas chisar and kis, that Rabbi Shimon holds of. And the Gemara continues, Zika demasni la seifa. Some people have a different version. They learn this sugya going on the end of the Mishnah. Avalo be'etzim sheba muksa. The end of the Mishnah says you're not allowed to take the wood from the muksa. So Amar Rav Kahana said, Zos Omer, this seems to indicate, Ein maschilin ba'otzer tchila, you're not allowed to take out of the otzer, meaning it is a problem, there is an issue of muksa. Moni Reb Yehuda he dislay muksa, sounds like the end of the Mishnah follows Reb Yehuda, who holds of muksa. So Ein Moresha, let's look at the line right before. Maschilin barei masatevin, it says you're allowed to take from the pile of straw. Asoin Rabbi Shimon, the Leslie muksa, that line seems to follow Rabbi Shimon, who does not hold of muksa, same contradiction. So in this version, the Gemara gives another answer. Hasam over there, meaning in the Ration, the first line by the straw, betivna sarya, we're talking about tivna sarya, meaning we're talking about tevin, we're talking about straw that's already spoiled. So in that case, it's not going to be used for food, it's normally going to be designated for firewood, or for fire, and therefore it's for sure going to be permitted, even according to Rav Yehuda. The Gemara says, is that really true? Tivna sari, if you have spoiled straw, hachazi latina, you can still use it because they would use this straw when they were making bricks. They would use it for the cement of the bricks. So the Gemara says, no, the isbe kotzim, it has thorns, it can't be needed for that purpose, and therefore, again, even according to Rabbi Yehuda, it can be used for fire, and we'll continue in the next video on Daf Lamed Amud Beis.